It's back into it in Chester. Here's El Senior. Yes! Yes!
The center back, Jacob Glesnes.
He's going for it.
Yes! Oh my goal! What a goal!
And that will do it. One of the best comebacks in recent years. 3 unanswered by the Union. And they go into the Gold Cup break, winning it 3-2.
Hello and welcome to the Free Kick Podcast. My name is Todd, and this is an extremely special episode for me. I know I told you guys the last 2 episodes that we would have conversations about the United Soccer Coaches Convention, and this whole idea, this whole episode came together, I think, a couple days ago, talking about it. We're like, how about you just come on the podcast? And my guest today was like, I want to come on the podcast. And I was like, all right, let's get you on the podcast. And so a lot of you guys, I'm sure this is going to be your first time ever hearing from this guy. Some of you guys, OG, when I was covering the Premier League, you guys should remember this guest. But I have a feeling a lot of you guys that were from the OG podcast probably aren't listening anymore. But if you are, I applaud you guys. So a long time ago, back in 2018, I met this guy when I was covering the Premier League. I don't even know how the conversation came about. I don't know if I DM'd him or he DM'd me, but somehow I got him to come onto the podcast. And he's a manager of a team in England called Piccadilly FC. He's a part of a soccer league in England called the London Underground Football League. And back in 2018, we did a mini-series where me and my old co-host Tyler would interview managers from this league. And Cem is my guest today, Cem Toygar. And he was the very first guest that came on and talked about the league and everything. And I'm really, really excited to get him back onto the podcast. So, Cem, long time no see.
Long time no see, Todd. It is an absolute privilege to be back on your amazing podcast. So thank you for giving me the chance to come back again.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this conversation. So more behind the scenes for you guys. No, this Cem and I, we've stayed in contact for all these years and everything, just hasn't been on the podcast. So I don't know. Like I said, 2018, that sound right, Cem, is when we got in contact with each other?
Yeah, that sounds about right. What are we now, 2022? Geez, it's gone quick.
About to be 2023. It's crazy, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, next month we're in 23. Yeah. It's gone so quick. It's amazing. Days run like water, but it's good to be back on.
For sure. And so, like I said, you came on the podcast a long time ago, and I was doing the Premier League thing, and I re-uploaded some of those old episodes when I started covering the Philadelphia Union, just because I needed more content. So I was like, this was a really, really good mini-series. So let me re-up some of these episodes. And I never heard feedback from people, but I did have a ton of people listen to those episodes. So I feel like people liked what they heard. And so any new listeners that don't know what the London Underground is, what Piccadilly is, can you just talk a little bit about the league, a little bit how you got involved with Piccadilly?
Yeah, sure. So the London Underground Football League started way back in 1996, before I was even involved in it. And basically, those that are familiar with London and the London Underground, or what you would call the subway system here, we have a team that represents each line. So we have the Piccadilly line, the Hammersmith and Circle line, Northern line, etc. And I got involved with the team way back in around 2015. I used to be a player for them, a bit part player, fringe player, if you like. He didn't get much game time, but I was a good player nevertheless. I think it was an oversight from the manager's part way back then. The team that I was playing for almost folded. They got relegated. There are 2 divisions, Division 1 and Division 2, both with 6 teams in each division. And we also have a cup game, which is equivalent to like the FA Cup, where both teams from Division 1 and 2 play together. And it's basically for London Underground and Transport for London employees to use and utilise and play for their physical and mental health outside of work. And it's been going since 1996. I got involved with a team managing it in 2015, and I've been the manager ever since. And recently, in the last 6 months, I got voted in to be the new LU League secretary. So I now help actually run the league in its entirety as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And you guys have been champion, what, the last 3 years, 2 years, something like that, in Division One, mind you.
Yeah, we've won 3 Division 1 titles in the last 3 years now, after being promoted from Division 2 before that. So a lot of people, well, a lot of other underground teams are probably fed up of it, which is why they've bolstered their teams heavily with reinforcements, and it's more competitive than ever. So no game's an easy game at the moment, but it's fun, exciting stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing I like about just the league in general, and I think the reason why we hit it off so well is because, yeah, you guys aren't recognized by the English pyramid as a proper non-league team, but nonetheless, it's grassroots soccer. And
It is.
you've had players that have played in the league, played for you, that have played for proper non-league teams, that have played in big FA Cup games against proper Premier League teams. You've had players in the league get scouted by non-league teams and eventually leave the London Underground and go play semi-professional. And so the opportunities for this league, like you said, it's for people that work in the underground to work on the mental health, just to have something outside of work. But there is opportunities for them to go and potentially become semi-footballers. And I love grassroots soccer. And I think when you were last on the podcast and everything, yeah, I was all in on the Premier League, and I was just starting to get into MLS again. And as the years have went on, I think about, people in this country, in America, they love the Premier League. We all know the Premier League's the number one league in the world. And you hear people talk about the Champions League and the Premier League all the time in America. But you have Americans that won't take the time of the day to watch MLS, to watch USL, to watch lower divisions in America. They won't support grassroots soccer. And the only way that you grow the league is by supporting your local club. It blows my mind that people are all in on the Premier League, which, hey, look, you like soccer, you're good in my book. But then at the same time, these people won't support their local clubs. And it's like, how can't you support that? And look, I know people say, well, MLS isn't on par with the Premier League. It's not as strong of a league as the Premier League, which I agree with. And I was under the same belief when I started watching MLS in 2007 after watching the Premier League, and it turned me off from watching MLS. But the league's grown so much from the very first time I watched MLS in 2007 to now in 2022. And yet you still have people that won't support grassroots soccer. And it's so important to support grassroots. Don't you believe?
I 100% agree with you. We all got to start from somewhere, Todd. And I find it incredible that people over there might not go and support their local non-league team or something. It's something that I do here, that I've done where I live. I've gone and helped a step 6, 7 team that are in the pyramid of football over here. And through that, I gained knowledge and wisdom that I applied to my team. And of course, one of my players ended up going and playing for that team at a later date. But yeah, it's definitely an important thing to do, to go and show support your local team. It's actually a fun day out, and you get to see something different rather than the same old, the Premier League is great and stuff, but you know what? It's nice to appreciate other talent and skilled players. And yeah, as I said, like, everything's got to start from somewhere. I mean, I've obviously, we'll probably come to this at a later part. I mean, obviously, I went and watched my first MLS game not so long ago, so I can relate to when you said that when you went and saw your first game and you compare it to the Premier League and stuff. But yeah, I think it's something that people, it's like anything, like, you have to try something once, and then once you try it and you get a taste for it, you'll tend to find that the fan base will grow and the audience will grow. Even the same thing with the London Underground. We hardly had any fans because we're not part of the pyramid, right? But by the time we had our League Cup and the word got out, so to speak, and one or two people were trickling in, we had like 100 fans or spectators, if you like, coming and watching our cup game. So in a similar way, that's how grassroots football works and grows with your local team by word of mouth. Obviously, social media is a powerful thing now as well, which a lot of non-league grassroots teams are utilizing, especially on Twitter and Instagram. And that helps them grow their brand. And in the same way, I see the MLS since many years ago has been growing immensely with their branding on social media as well. So they all go hand in hand together.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And the one thing I think that's really cool about your team is you guys get involved with Arsenal for the Community, I believe it was, where you guys got invited out to the Emirates where Arsenal play. And Arsenal invited you guys out to go and watch a game at the stadium. You guys got to play a game, I think, in one of their training facilities or something like that. So it's like, yeah, I mean, you guys are, like you said, not in the pyramid per se, but you're involved in the local community in London. And you guys partnered with this big worldwide club in Arsenal. And they appreciated what you guys are doing for London. People that literally make London run. Without you guys, there is no public transportation in London. Because let's face it, it's a huge city, and so yeah, there's cars and everything, but majority of the people, I would say, take that public transportation. And without you guys, the workers, and there is none of that. And so to see Arsenal say, hey, look, you guys are doing a fantastic job, literally keeping this city running. We want to partner with you guys. We want to show our appreciation to you guys.
Yeah, and recently, as you quite rightly pointed out, Arsenal got in touch with Transport for London, and they got in touch with us separately. Their recent Barman Maquette training top that they launched, they contacted us and asked, would we be willing to help them launch their product after the likes of Saka and all their other great players had worn the shirt in their photo shoot. They wanted our players to also step foot on the Emirates Stadium, do a photo shoot with a professional photographer, and then it was all shared on social media. Incredible. If you want to see that, at Piccadilly FC 1996 on the Instagram handle. Amazing. And it's all about building relationships. You got to start small. For example, as we discussed earlier, with your non-league team. For me, because I'm not in London anymore, I live in Bedfordshire, a county called Bedfordshire. So my local non-league team is Dunstable FC. I've helped them out through that. We've grown the local community in London where Piccadilly play. And of course, the Emirates Stadium, Arsenal are the closest to us, and they've been amazing in terms of supporting us. And we've also, as big as they are, we've still helped and supported them in other ways. You know, there's always something you can do for other people. It's never one-way traffic when it comes to building relationships. So yeah, it's been amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll leave a link to all of Cem's club's links in the show description. I'll leave the league description in the show notes if you guys want to go ahead and check all that out. But yeah, I mean, grassroots soccer is so important to support. And yeah, I get people in America say, "Oh, we don't like MLS because there's no pro relegation," which, you know, I felt the same way too. Again, because comparing it to the European leagues, where okay, your bottom three teams get relegated, your top three teams in the division below get promoted, and yeah, I mean, it's a great way to continue to bring excitement to the league, but it's so hard where you have MLS as a single entity, where you have owners literally spending millions upon millions of dollars to buy a franchise. And that's just to buy into the league. That's not buying players. It's not buying the stadium. That's just buying in to the league. And so to say, okay, we're going to have promotion and relegation. Yeah, we know you just spent $300 million to join the league, but because you finish in the bottom half of the table, now you're getting relegated. And yeah, it doesn't matter if you spend $300 million, you suck, you're going down. Like that would be a hard pill to swallow for some of these billionaire owners to say, I gave you $300 million and now I'm going down to a weaker division where now I'm not going to get the revenue share that you're getting in the first division. Like, I get it. Promotion relegation is fun, but there's no way, in my opinion, that that can work, or at least work like it's working in Europe for all those years. But again, supporting grassroots soccer, it's so, so, so special. And I know you might not know this name, but there's a guy that used to play for the University of Maryland. Ben Bender plays for Charlotte FC now. And a lot of my listeners should know that he played a year in the Philadelphia Union's academy before he went to Maryland. And when he wasn't in session playing with Maryland, he was playing with his local grassroots soccer team in Maryland just to stay fit and just to stay competitive and everything. And yeah, again, kind of like the London Underground, don't get a ton of support out there, but people still go out to this game, support local soccer, and you do occasionally see players that, okay, are playing for the local club, and they eventually do make it, get an opportunity to play a couple steps higher, like it's happened in the London Underground, or people have got chances to go and play in MLS or play in USL. So, yeah, it's just really, really crazy to me that people don't support grassroots soccer, and it's something, the sport's not going to grow unless you support local soccer. It's great that you support soccer in other countries, but if you don't support it in your country, it's never going to grow.
Yeah, I agree. And it's something to be celebrated with grassroots football, watching the progress of someone, kind of like when you get a job and you start from the bottom and work your way up to the top. And an example of what you've just talked about in terms of, yeah, our players aren't professionals as such, but they have their hand in some semi-professional football, for example, one of which in the last couple of years, one of them got to play in the FA Cup in the early rounds. Now, that's a massive achievement in itself. So it's definitely it's definitely a good thing to support, not just physically and emotional support, but financial support, because that's the way that these teams can grow. And as you know, Todd, in a lot of grassroots football, funding is far and few between, and it doesn't really trickle down from the pyramid from the big teams all the way down to the bottom as such, or fairly. So people have to rely on other sorts of funding and stuff for them to be able to progress. Whereas, as you just rightly said, with MLS, the money's already invested, it's there. But then the flip side of that is they don't have any relegation or promotion to worry about. Whereas over here, when you're relegated, you lose a lot of money. So to get back in, you've got to try it a lot. It's got to be a hard work to get back into the Premier League again. And over the years, you've had teams that have folded and have been in financial crisis because of this promotion and relegation business, like Bury FC, for example. But
yeah, for sure. I mean, there's nothing more I can say on this topic other than, support local soccer. Now, I know all you guys listen to the podcast. I mean, you guys wouldn't be listening to the podcast if you weren't fans of the Philadelphia Union. So, that's why I love doing this podcast, because we all support the Philadelphia Union. But like you mentioned, maybe like 5 minutes ago, you went to your first MLS game this July, I believe it was. You were over here in the United States in the summer for like 3 weeks, I want to say it was. And you went to multiple states in your time here. And you were going to be in Nashville for the 4th of July. And so I looked at the schedule for Nashville. I was like, hey, look, they're going to be in town when you and your friend are in town. You're like, all right, I'll see if my friend wants to go to a game. And then you guys ran into a couple, I believe, at your hotel or something like that said, hey, what are you guys doing tonight? And they're like, we're going to an MLS game. And you guys want to tag along? You're like, hey, my friend Todd said something about this. Yeah, let's go. And so you guys go ahead. You get tickets. It doesn't matter where, StubHub, wherever. And you guys get tickets. You get to the stadium. You go to Geodis Park, which is the newest stadium in MLS. It had only been up for a couple months. So, I mean, you were one of the first people ever in the stadium. And you saw Nashville versus Portland Timbers. The game ended 2-2 with Nashville being up 2-0. And then they blow blow a 2-0 lead. And they always say a 2-0 lead's the worst possible lead you can have in soccer. Just what are your thoughts from attending your first MLS match? You got to visit the newest stadium in MLS.
Firstly, can I just say that I'm gutted that I couldn't go and see a Philadelphia Union game, because like being British and that, obviously I'm not going to be loyal or affiliated to a certain team for any way in particular. But that being said, speaking to yourself over the years and stuff, and seeing your passion for Philadelphia Union, and obviously I've become more intrigued and interested in Philly Union as well. I'm more now lean towards supporting Philly Union more than any other team, naturally. So I hope everyone else are very happy to hear that on your podcast. But yeah, I went and saw Nashville SC. I think it was against Portland Timbers. And well, firstly, let me start by the stadium looked amazing. Very impressive, brand new stadium, nicely organized. Compared to stadiums in the UK, didn't take long to get in, didn't take long to find my seat, certainly didn't take long to get out either, compared to, say, for example, the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium with the 60,000 plus that's in there. I'm not sure what the capacity of Nashville Stadium is off the top of my head, but very, very professional looking. Loved the stadium. The acoustics of the stadium was amazing. The atmosphere was amazing. And the match itself was very enjoyable to watch. Shame Nashville couldn't get the win, because we were in Nashville. As you said, they slipped up, but it made it entertaining. And I think at the end of it, it was a fair result on the day as well. So yeah, really enjoyed watching it. Did obviously compare it to the Premier League quite a bit. The pace probably not as quick or as aggressive as the Premier League, but nevertheless, it was still a great display of football.
Yeah, for sure. And don't hold back. Give your real thoughts on what you think about MLS. Just because you're coming on the podcast as a guest, now don't hold back, because I think as people that enjoy MLS, that enjoy Philadelphia Union, yeah, we're very protective of our league and we get offended by what people have to say about our league. But I think it is good hearing from somebody that attended the first ever game. Look, all these people in England or other countries that bash on MLS and everything, I can guarantee you they've never once been to a game themselves or watched a full game on TV. And by the way, let's give credit to England for actually showing these matches on TV. They're trying to grow MLS over in the country, which is a huge step, in my opinion, where yeah, I think English people think that they're the most superior soccer nation in the world. Or at least that's how some people come across on social media. But, the executives over in the TV industry in England, they don't care. They're still going to show MLS matches. And the big talking point for people, Europeans, are, it's a retirement league. All they get is old retired players. But, if people actually paid attention to what's been happening the last couple of years in the league, that's not been the case. We're seeing younger players from South America leave South America, where, yeah, they can make more money in MLS than they were making in South America. And they stay a couple of years in MLS, then they could get scouted by teams in Europe. Our coach, our sporting director at Philadelphia Union, Jim Curtin and Ernst Tanner, they say it all the time that European scouts are always at their training sessions, just scouting the team. They're aware of what the Philadelphia Union are doing in MLS with their academy, with their first team. And, when you win a lot of games, naturally, you're going to have a lot of eyes on you. And you have younger players in Europe that, are playing in the second, third division or playing for lower leagues in these top divisions in some of these countries. And they want to go ahead and leave. Maybe they're not getting the chance. Maybe the money's right, whatever the case may be, redefine their career. So they go to MLS. And when players come here to MLS, yeah, they do have that mindset, because I think that is still the mindset in Europe, that MLS is a retirement league. But if people actually paid attention to the league, like I said, it's not that. And the one thing the players always say is, wow, the facilities over here compared to where we were just at in Europe, it's a night and day difference. Like, you guys are literally all in on soccer, and these are state of the art facilities over here in the stadium. I know two of our players, Mikael Uhr, a striker we got from Brøndby, and Daniel Gazdag, who we got from Honved, who plays in the Hungarian league. They both said that. The first thing they said when they came over to America is, wow, these facilities are state of the art facilities like they are in Europe. And then obviously you get into the talk of, okay, well, how's the play going to be? Is it going to be slow? And a lot of players say, yeah, I've been surprised by the level of play. It's not slow. It's a physical league. Chiellini, who plays for LAFC, formerly of Juventus, one of the first things he said after a couple games was, this is a very, very, very physical league. And we all know Serie A is one of the most physical leagues in the world. And for a world-class center back in Chiellini to come and say, yeah, this is a very physical league, I think that can only help MLS. And we all know, it doesn't matter where you are in the United States, the climate's going to be different. Where you look in England, where it's a small country compared to the United States, where the temperature is probably going to be similar in the whole country, where you can go to the West Coast and it's in the 70s. You go to the East Coast, go down to Florida, and the humidity is a night and day difference. I mean, you experienced that, right? When you were in Nashville, just how hot and humid it was down south. And I think a lot of players have to adjust to that. They get caught off guard where it does make a big difference. You got to be in shape. You got to have the stamina to go from playing on the East Coast to take a plane ride to the West Coast, because let's face it, when you're in England, you're taking a train. Everything, the farthest you're traveling is probably like 3 hours if you're going from the top of the country down to the bottom of the country. But typically, you're not traveling that week in, week out, where in MLS, that's the norm.
Can I just say on what you said there in regards to the MLS arguments for and against, in terms of, players that come to the MLS when it's kind of near the end of their season. One of the players you just mentioned there, Chiellini, near the end of his professional career. Beckham did that. Gareth Bale's now doing that at LAFC. But then, as you rightly said, there are other players now, younger players from the first division in Denmark, Brøndby, and other leagues around the world. They're coming now to MLS. And actually, I think MLS is evolving and going and growing in the right direction it needs to go, with the facilities that they've got, with the money that they're putting into it. And a prime example of MLS actually being successful, an example of how and why that is someone who might not watch MLS very regularly, but does take interest and watch MLS. Compare it to Turkish football. Now, Turkish football in the 2000s, they've got the four top teams. They've got Galatasaray, Fenerbahce, Beşiktaş, and Trabzonspor. They were the top four. And I remember Turkey as a team, because we know the World Cup's going off right now. In the 2000s, Turkey came third in the World Cup. That's because their football at the time was growing and evolving because of Galatasaray. And at the time, they had Georgie Hagi, who was going towards the end of his career, and Tafarel, who was the goalkeeper of Brazil. So they were helping the Turkish Football Academy and bringing through youngsters and stuff like that. Their football has since gone backwards, and it hasn't evolved to a place where those teams have got the money and all the facilities to invest in players that are in their prime or younger upcoming talent. That's something that the MLS are actually doing now, whereas they didn't do that in Turkey. Turkey should have been there from a long, long time ago. They've gone backwards in their football, and that's why you don't really see Turkey competitively on the bigger stages now, like the Euro Championships and the World Cup, because they've suffered. And look, we'll probably talk about this again. This is going to be connected again. USA, England. USA have evolved as a nation because of the progress domestically and because of grassroots football. It's all connected. So you invest at the lower part you know, people might not see it this way, but in my opinion, you invest in the lower part, then when you get to the higher level, it's going to pay dividends basically. And I just think, yeah, the MLS has grown and it's growing even more. I think it's quite an exciting league. The fact that it has a different format in terms of, you know, the playoffs, which we've spoken about so many times, right? Now, I told you as a British guy, I don't understand it, right? If you're top of the league, you should be the champion, right? But the playoff in its own way makes the thing exciting in the same way that relegation promotion does. So it swings and roundabouts, as we say. And I've actually got used to the playoff format and I kind of love it. So, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we see all the other major sports in America do playoffs, and that's the most exciting part of the whole season is playoffs. And I know people are like, okay, well, why should we pay attention to the regular season if playoffs is the only thing that matters? Well, you know, you want to take the regular season serious so you can get a higher seed, so you can get home games. And I know back in the day when a few years ago where, okay, it didn't matter where you were seated, you were guaranteed to get a home game, and then you would go on the road, and then they would go off of away goals, which we all know they were doing that for a while in the Champions League, but now they've went away from that, I think, the last couple seasons. And then MLS decided, all right, well, we shouldn't have 2-leg playoff games anymore. We should just go to one. And whoever's the higher seed, they're going to have the home game. And so the regular season does matter because you want to host as many home games as possible. We saw with the Philadelphia Union this season. They went undefeated in the regular season at home. They went undefeated in the playoffs because all the games were at home. And then they went on to the road to LAFC. They lose that game in penalties. I don't have to remind you guys. And we don't have to talk about that game. But it is important to see that home field advantage makes a big difference. And that's why I do think that the regular season still does have its place. Yes, I mean, you want to get in the playoffs, and then that's where the most exciting soccer happens and everything. That's when the season starts, you can say. But you want to make sure that you do well enough in the regular season where you can get into the playoffs. And you were talking about grassroots soccer. You look at Brendan Aronson with the U.S. men's national team, who's 22 years old, formerly of Philadelphia Union, came through their academy. Tyler Adams, who was the captain for America, now at Leeds United, came through Newark Red Bulls academy. We go ahead and look. Weston McKennie, who's at Juventus, came through FC Dallas's academy. You look at Christian Pulisic. He played grassroots soccer locally in Pennsylvania, had a tryout with the Union's academy, never signed because the Union's academy wasn't what it was today. We see him at Chelsea. I mean, you see so many examples on this U.S. roster. Giovanni Reyna came through New York City's academy, playing with Borussia Dortmund. I mean, MLS does have its place, and I know Americans love to hate on MLS. We talked about it earlier, right? But this roster we saw that America had at the World Cup, and I know we'll get to it here in a little bit. A lot of these players on this roster came through MLS academies, and they might not have been long in MLS, but they made a difference. MLS made a difference to get them to this point in their career where they're playing for top clubs in England, and we all know that, right? Players say it all the time in America that their dream is to play in the Champions League, to play in a top 5 league in the world. And it's funny enough because when the Union were getting ready to take on LAFC, we do media day and everything because it's the final and everything. And so both teams, coaches and whatnot, are just talking to the media, getting asked a ton of questions. And our coach, Jim Curtin, you know, he was asked about MLS, where he sees MLS in a couple years. And he said that why can't MLS be a top league by 2026? He said the stadiums, the facilities, the players that are coming here, the coaches that are coming here, why is it so crazy that 2026, this isn't the top league in the world? And then he kind of clarified his comments a couple of days ago and wasn't saying that MLS is going to be the top league, but essentially, why can't it be? We were talking about all the money that's invested into the league, young players coming in, the facilities are world class. You were at the newest stadium in MLS. You were talking about the atmosphere. It's half of what Spurs does, but you said the acoustics are fantastic. Chiellini talked about LAFC supporters singing for 90 minutes where he didn't think that was going to happen at all, which you're used to all that noise in England. He's like, they brought noise from way before the game started. until after the game was over. And he was taken back by that, and comparing the atmosphere to Italy. I know our striker Mikel Ua, like we talked about, from Brøndby. Okay, the atmosphere at times wasn't what he was used to at Brøndby, but every time we had a playoff game, he said this is exactly what it's like in Europe. This atmosphere that you can feel the fans breathing down your neck. They are not letting off of you. You can feel that the atmosphere is making a difference. And so, I mean, hearing that quote from Philadelphia Union's head coach Jim Curtin saying that, why can't MLS be a top league by 2026? Not that it will be the top league, but is that crazy for you to hear that MLS could be a top league one day?
To be honest, personally, I can see it for very different reasons. The lifestyle, as you rightly pointed out, because obviously the US is a massive, massive territory, right? So you got the states that are beautiful, sunny. You got the states that are cold and icy, but the lifestyle, I think, would attract a lot of the players. But also with the structure and the money that's going into it, I can see it growing. I mean, it already is. I can see it becoming, a top serious league that people would talk about, just as the British take interest in the NFL, because we don't have that here. We have rugby, but we're fascinated about NFL, so much so that when it comes over here to Wembley Stadium or to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, they are full. It's a full house. People go and watch it. So in the same way, I think MLS can be and will be. It's going to take a little time, but it will be for sure. And as I said, the money that's been invested in it and higher profile players are now coming over because of that as well. Yeah, for sure. I think it's going to be probably one of the, at the moment. What would you say, Todd, is the top three leagues after the Premier League? Who would you say is top three? Would you say Serie A and who else?
I'd say Bundesliga, La Liga, and then Serie A, and then Ligue 1. I mean, that's the top 5 leagues right there with the Premier League at the top. And I'm glad you brought that up, too, because it's so hard. Like, we all know that, okay, those are the top 5 leagues. But then after that, it's like, okay, how do we compare the rest of the leagues in the world? Because there's a ton of them, right? And it really is a hard to get a grip on, okay, how do we compare these leagues? It's impossible. There's really nothing you can do to prove that this league's better than this league. Yes, you're going to have teams that are better than this one team in this other league, but to try to compare the leagues, it's hard. And Global Football Rankings, they use 538's data to rank leagues, and 538, they have a whole bunch of data that can predict games, and a whole bunch of other variables. I talked about that a while ago, 538's rankings. So if you guys want to hear me talk about 538, you guys can go ahead and listen to one of these older episodes where I talked about that. But yeah, they took 538's data and try to rank the top leagues in the world. And they put MLS as the 15th best league in the world. They said that they were better than the Danish league, the Swiss league, and the Scottish Premiership. But they have the Turkish league, the Austrian league, the Belgian league, and the Championship ranked higher. And it is funny, too, where the Championship is ranked higher, where I would agree it probably is higher than MLS. And I know, talking to you, when you went to your first ever game in MLS, you said, yeah, this is not even Championship quality. And it's funny that you said that, because our sporting director, Ernst Tanner, who's been all over Europe, was in the Red Bull system. He was with Hoffenheim, I believe it was. I mean, top clubs in Europe. And he said, yeah, I would put MLS on par with the Championship. The level of play is probably to the Championship. And I know, talking to you and your friend were like, now, this isn't even Championship quality. And, it was one game that you guys saw.
I agree. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off.
Fine.
I agree that it was around about Championship quality. My friend Jags was harsher than that, and he thought it was League One. I didn't agree with that personally. And I'm not just saying that because I'm talking to you. I do think it was like the pace of it, and the aggression levels and just the quality of football I just think it was championship level, not premiership level. It wasn't as silky. That's the word I would use. It wasn't as silky as the Premier League. But I would say championship level for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and like I said, I mean, don't hold back. I think it's good to hear different people's opinions, especially people that actually have seen an MLS game. So many times we see on social media people are bashing MLS because it's the fun thing to do. We don't watch it. All they get is European players that are past their prime and everything. But let's face it, Gareth Bale had a chance to sign with Cardiff in the championship. They were offering him a lot more money than what LAFC were giving Gareth Bale, or at least that's what we were led to believe. Somehow he wasn't a designated player, and maybe someday that comes out that, this is exactly what LAFC offered Gareth Bale to get him to come to LA. But the point is, he had offers to stay in Europe, and he wanted to go to America, and he went to America.
But you need to ask yourself why that is, Todd. Again, we touched on this earlier. It's the lifestyle. The US, there are other elements to it as well, but where would you rather go? Cardiff or sunny LA?
Yeah, I mean, everybody's going to choose the sunshine in LA, right?
Right, exactly. Because Cardiff, it's raining constantly all the time. I know because I go down there every so often, and he could have gone back to Cardiff. He's Welsh. He could have gone home, so to speak, to finish off his career. He chose not to. I don't know what the money difference was between LAFC and Cardiff. I don't know, but just talking on lifestyle and appeal and branding and stuff to do with social media, the US, the Americans know how to do it, man. So and that's a compliment. So of course, you would want to not just finish off your career there, but as we say, as MLS evolves, maybe you might start seeing players going there during their prime as well,
Yeah, for sure. And I am happy that MLS is past the days where, we need to sign these over-the-age players and everything, like I mentioned. I mean, these lower leagues in Europe, these players that want to play in the top leagues in Europe are coming to MLS to redefine their career and everything, to get eyes on them, because people are paying attention to MLS. And I think one thing that is going to help MLS, and I know I've been pretty harsh about the whole Apple TV deal, but Apple, all you need is an Apple subscription, and you can watch MLS anywhere in the world. And everybody, I feel like, in the world has Apple, or they have access to getting Apple subscription. And so literally that's all you need to watch MLS in the world. I think that will help MLS grow globally. Maybe it's going to hurt it here in America, where your locals, where they were watching on local TV, they're like, why do I have to get another app to watch soccer? Yeah, I'm going to be turned off from this. I'm not going to watch this and everything. So yeah, maybe you're going to hurt it locally. But like we said, if you really do care about your soccer teams, why not go support grassroots soccer? Why not go to the game and everything? Why not get the subscription services to watch your local league? And I guess that's going to tell you how invested people really are in local soccer, because they have no problem paying for subscription services to watch the Premier League or other leagues in the world. But when it comes to MLS, I don't want to do that. So I don't think Jim Curtin, going back to the original question, I don't think he's crazy for saying that MLS can be a top league in the world. And I think we have seen just major strides MLS has taken even the last 5 years. And so the league's going to continue to grow. It's good to hear players that have played for big clubs in Europe say great things about the facilities, about the stadiums. And I'm glad you were able to experience the newest stadium in MLS. And that's definitely one of these stadiums I'm going to check out one of these days. Everybody has high praise for Geodis Park in Nashville. Funny enough, the Philadelphia Union were the very first team to ever play in Nashville in that stadium. Game ended 1-1. We all remember Union should have won that game, gave up a BS penalty at the end, but that's neither here or there. But like you mentioned, the last thing we're talking about is USA England. And it is so funny just seeing, and I'll give you props for this, right? I think you're a realist. I think that you don't buy into, what the nice trend is, where a lot of people I saw on social media, English people were saying, "Oh, this is a disgrace. This is the worst result ever for England to tie America." Where talking to you, you were full of praise for America. You said this is a very, very quality team. This is a team that is going to make noise come 2026. Where you look, Serginho Dest, 22 years old. He's not even in his prime yet. Plays for AC Milan. By the 2026 World Cup, he'll be 26 years old. We talked about Brendan Aronson, 22. Weston McKennie, 24. Tyler Adams, 23. Yunus Musa, 20 years old. You have
Musa impressed me particularly. He's going to be a big star in my opinion as well.
A guy who could have potentially played for England. He grew up in the Arsenal Academy, and Greg Berhalter, to his credit, convinced him, hey, look, I know you were only born in America and then you were off, like your family was on holiday in America and you were born here in New York City, and that made him eligible for America. And Greg Berhalter, to his credit, convinced Musa to sign and play professionally for the U.S. national team instead of England. And I think that was a huge get for Greg Berhalter. Christian Pulisic, 24 years old. He'll be 28 by the time the World Cup comes to America. Tim Weah, 22 years old. I mean, he impressed. I mean, so many players this World Cup for America, in my opinion, impressed. Yeah, they didn't go and get past the round of 16, but, you know, they got a result against England. They should have beat Wales. They essentially won a knockout game against Iran, the 1-0 win. Christian Pulisic scoring that goal. And so I think, yeah, we wanted to see the U.S. get by the Netherlands, but to see this was the World Cup just for these players to gel together, they impressed. And to see some English people say, oh, this is the worst result ever. Like, America sucks and everything, but you're a realist, and you said this is a good squad.
What I would say is, like, in connection to grassroots football and the US-England game, I would urge any grassroots team, amateur or semi-professional team, to watch USA's display against England, because it was a disciplined performance, very organized. You could see that the instructions were clear. The players knew what they were doing. They always had their shape, and they knew when they had their chance to counter-attack and pounce on England. They didn't get overzealous with the possession and stuff. They just the players were at the right place at the right time, and they put the work rate in to keep up with that intensity. Don't forget, we got players that play in the Premier League, and they say the Premier League's the best league in the world because of the sheer speed and pace and power and stuff. But yeah, the US was able to keep up with that, no problem whatsoever. They didn't even break a sweat. I think they've done really well. I think one of the things we discussed was the only thing that the US was missing was a number 9, like a full-fledged striker. They get the ball, they're hitting the ball at the back of the net. So if the US solves that problem and gets that, they're going to be a force to be reckoned with. If they had that striker, they might have even got to the quarterfinals, semi-finals this campaign. And I think they've got a great team. I think the display against England was amazing. I'm excited by the young team that the US have got, to be honest. And as you rightly pointed out, you got players playing in Serie A, you got players playing in the Premier League. Some have come through the MLS ranks. They've got an exciting team, and I look forward to see what else they can do in the future moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, that's been the biggest talking point here in America is, yep, we don't have a striker. We don't have a proper number 9, where the last number 9 I can think of that the US had that was a legit number 9, not playing Clint Dempsey as a number 9, not playing Landon Donovan as a 9, is Josie Altidore. And what was Josie doing? He was playing in Hull City. He was playing with Sunderland. He was the last proper number 9 for the US. Why do you think it is so hard? Because we see it in football all the time. It is the hardest position, the most expensive position in the world. People need goal scorers. It's so hard to produce. Why do you think that is?
I couldn't tell you. If I knew, I'd be rich. I'd be a millionaire. But I mean,
True.
Again, it might be related to grassroots football. Maybe they're not being scouted correctly, or they're not coming through the ranks the way they should be in terms of like the attackers, like the strikers. I don't know. Like, it's hard to tell. Like, one thing that I do notice over the years with football is you never get a team, i.e., like an England or a France or a Turkey, that have an all-round team where they have amazing strikers, amazing defenders, amazing midfielders all at once. It's almost like a cycle. So I remember where Turkey went for a cycle of having amazing defenders, but their midfielders were not great. In the same way, I think US have gone through a cycle where their midfield right now and their attack is amazing, but they just haven't got that centre forward at the moment. So I think this is just to do with a natural regular cycle that, you know, maybe in the next season or two, by the time we get to the next major tournament, you will find that number 9. It's just a cycle that I think all teams, national teams, go through. I mean, think of England right now, right? We have to stick with Harry bleeding Maguire. Harry Maguire, like, no offense, but I'd take any other defender than Harry Maguire right now, because we are going through a cycle right now that there isn't any decent centre-back for us at the moment. So we have to play Harry Maguire. So that just proves my theory, which is that there must be a natural cycle that goes round. And unfortunately, it doesn't fall in such a way where when you get amazing midfielders and or defenders, you won't get an amazing striker as well. So fear not, it will come around. It's just, when is it going to happen?
Yeah, that's a good point, right? And I know, like, a lot of people, and I talked about this with Phil Whedon, who's the goalkeeper coach for the Philadelphia Union when he was on the podcast, where, okay, everybody expected the U.S. to always have a good goalkeeper. You look at Tim Howard, who was a staple in the net for the U.S., Brad Friedel, who used to play for Tottenham Hotspur, was a staple in the net for the U.S. And then it was like, okay, who's going to play goalie for the U.S.? Is it going to be Matt Turner, who eventually was the goalkeeper, who had a great tournament, in my opinion? He was the backup goalkeeper at Arsenal. And now it's like, okay, yeah, it's great and everything that you're at Arsenal, but you can't afford to be the backup goalkeeper. You've got to go someplace where you can play week in, week out. Was it going to be Zach Steffen, who was the backup for a while at Manchester City, where his form had dropped and he eventually lost his starting spot with the U.S. And, you know, yeah, the one thing Phil Whedon said was, okay, maybe we're not as dominant in the goalkeeper department as we had been in years past. And, yeah, the thing that we're good at this World Cup, we showed it, was in the midfield with Adams, Musa, and McKennie. You could throw Brendan Aronson in there. And, yeah, we were one of the best midfields, I would say, throughout the group stages with those 3 players, Adams, Musa, and McKennie. And so maybe it does happen the next cycle. But since we're on the topic of the World Cup, I mean, what have you made of it so far? I know we talk about it all the time, but in my opinion, there's not been one standout team. It really does feel like anybody can win this World Cup.
Yeah, there's not been any standout team. I think there, in the latter stages, especially, there's been a lot of drama in the last few days with extra time and penalty shootouts, which has made it exciting. I mean, to be honest, when this is another thing altogether, but when the World Cup first started and was announced in Qatar, like many other people, I wasn't really excited for many different reasons, which we won't go into. But now that it's up and underway, it's been quite enjoyable to watch. And in terms of who I think will win it, I couldn't tell you, but I'm going to say that I'm going to say, and I'm going to stick my neck out here, that England can make it to the final. Whether they win it or not, I don't know. I think they can make it to the final, though. If they can make it this far with Harry Maguire, then they can definitely get to the final, in my opinion. But I think we're still going to see a couple of surprises on the way as well. And I'm not going to say any spoilers while we're recording this.
Yeah, for sure, because we're recording this podcast before the Morocco game, before the England-France game. And so we don't know what's going to happen. By the time you guys listen to this podcast, you guys will already know what happens in those games. Maybe England does eventually lose to France. But, I mean, I guess it's possible, right? Croatia's looked excellent. They're relying on their experience, their captain, Luka Modric. And they beat Brazil in penalties. I mean, it seems like whenever you go into extra time with Croatia, Croatia is always going to find a way to win it. And they've been surprising this tournament. I think the 2018 World Cup, I think a lot of us were surprised to see them in the final against France, like a country that has less than 4 million people that we all know was a part of Yugoslavia, who, when that was a country, one of the best soccer countries in the world. And then that country broke up, and the most dominant team out of all these countries that made up Yugoslavia has been Croatia. I know, we've seen Serbia been there. They've been in the last couple of World Cups. We've seen Bosnia in the World Cups in the past, but nobody's been as consistent, as dominant as Croatia has been. Morocco's been a surprise seeing them beat Spain in penalties. Maybe they can surprise us today and beat Portugal. We shall see. But yeah, this World Cup, it's been strange where we see Brazil dominate one game and then they have a shocker against Cameroon. They lose to Croatia. We see Portugal just annihilate a team 6-2 with Cristiano Ronaldo on the bench. And that's a podcast for another day, where I think Ronaldo's past it, and I think that he's letting his ego get in the way, and it's hard for him to accept that. They're a much better team than they are with him starting, in my opinion. But, it has been interesting seeing that the drama of the World Cup's brought the last couple of days, where, yeah, in years past, you can say, yep, this is going to be the favorites. But I never really got that this World Cup.
Yeah, I mean, normally you have your Germanys, you have your Spains in there, don't you? The heavyweights, they're always in like the semi-finals and stuff. Spain, Germany, Portugal, France, obviously your Brazils and your Argentinas. But obviously Argentina, they're through, they beat Netherlands. But Brazil, you'd expect them to do a lot better than what they did this campaign. I mean, they look really promising, but I think you highlighted some inconsistency there, which isn't like Brazil really. So maybe they're going through a transition of their own at the moment. But yeah, it's an interesting one, not having a out and out favorite really, because whether you have a favorite or not, you always know a team that's always you're going to be like, no matter what happens, this team's going to be in the final. Don't know if they'll win it, but they'll definitely be in the final. And there hasn't even been that sort of talk either. I think everyone's just watching and just waiting to see what happens, which it's kind of cool because it gives a different dynamic, and it's a bit of a change to what we're used to. It's like in Formula One, you're used to Lewis Hamilton winning again and again, and you get bored of it. Although Max Verstappen won it the last 2 years. What that's got to do with football, I don't know. But it's just an example of you don't know who's going to win it this year. And it could be any of them, to be honest. It depends who turns up. It's who turns up and puts that shift in and works as a team, because I don't think, although you got Ronaldo and you got Messi and they've spoken about Neymar, they've spoken about Mbappe, right? Have you really heard about an individual outstanding performance every game throughout this World Cup?
You haven't.
No, no, you haven't. So this World Cup proves that the team that's going to win is exactly that, the team that plays as one, as a solid unit. That's the team that's going to win this year.
Yep, and I think that's a perfect place where we can end this podcast. I think that's why we're all fans of the Philadelphia Union, because I say it all the time on this podcast, and I'm sure you guys get tired of it. And we talked about it a little bit, how, teams are now investing in their academies. We saw players play for the U.S. men's national team come through MLS academies and get their moves to Europe. And as more teams invest in their academies, invest in local soccer, the U.S. is going to continue to grow. They're going to continue to get up there with some of the best in the world. And that's why we love Philadelphia Union, because they've started this trend where, wow, teams are looking at the Union's academy, investing into that academy, and producing good players for the first team. Or if these players don't sign for the Union's first team, they're going to play for top clubs in college soccer, Division I. And maybe they weren't ready to be professionals, but they're able to use what they learned with the Philadelphia Union's Academy, get free education. And just like with Ben Bender, who I talked about, stayed a couple years at Maryland, got drafted number 1 by Charlotte, and now he's a professional. So, people's pathways in soccer is different. Not everybody's the same, but it all comes back to grassroots soccer. And once you invest into that, you're going to see success. But Cem, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast again. Hopefully you guys enjoy this a lot different than our mini-series we did with the London Underground, where I talked with each individual manager, talked about the league. Yeah, we talked about that a little bit here. But the topic of today, I think, just comes back to grassroots soccer. It's important to support that, to be invested into that. And once you do that, you're going to see results.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much for allowing me to come back on the show again, talk about the different topics that we've spoken about today. It's been really enjoyable. And yeah, as you said, it all comes back to grassroots football, and it's important that we support it in every aspect we can in order to enable growth and development.
For sure. And I know you mentioned where people can find Piccadilly earlier, but again, if people forgot, where can they find you all on social media?
On Twitter, it's Piccadilly FC, at Piccadilly FC. On Instagram, it's at Piccadilly FC 1996.
For sure. And I'll leave a link in the show description, as I always do when guests come on. If you guys aren't following the podcast on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, follow at Free Kick Pod, wherever you get your podcast. Check out the podcast, The Free Kick. Check out the website, thefreekick.net. And I got to give a shout out to my guy, Ben Ross, for hooking me up with pictures for the website. Anytime that I write an article and everything, he's coming in clutch with pictures I can use. So shout out to Ben. Look up Ben on Instagram. I'll leave a link to his Instagram handles and everything. Fantastic up-and-coming photographer. Future is bright for him. And don't forget about the United Soccer Coaches Convention in Philadelphia from January 11th through January 15th. More and more names are getting dropped who are going to be at the convention. Obviously, I'm going to be there with a podcast. So if you guys are going there, you want to learn from some of the best in the world, the latest in soccer trends, come out to the convention, whether it be for a day, whether it be for the whole convention. Would love to see you guys out there in Philadelphia for the soccer convention. Going to be a great time. And hopefully you guys enjoyed something a little bit different this episode. And again, it's nice to get Cem back onto the podcast to talk about just a beautiful game. Just get a different perspective. Somebody that doesn't watch MLS, but did attend his first MLS game. But again, somebody that works in grassroots football, soccer, whatever you want to call it, and to see the impact. And we're seeing it here in America. So hopefully you guys took something away from this episode. But until then, my name is Todd, and this is the Free Kick Podcast.